Welcome, Irish fans, to this week's special early football signing day edition of the Jack Swarbrick Show. On this week's show, we will review Notre Dame's early signing class with the men who live and breathe Notre Dame football recruiting all year long. Head coach Brian Kelly, assistant head coach and defensive line coach Mike Elston, and recruiting coordinator and special teams coordinator Brian Polian. But first, to get things started, here is your host, Jack Swarbrick, Notre Dame's vice president and director of athletics. Sam Bush was supposed to join us, but we're taping this right in the middle of the day on December 20th, and he's got a little thing called football practice and meetings to go to, so you're a little stuck with me. I know we're going to talk a lot about recruiting, but this is the end of the year. The show will air on various outlets throughout the holidays and right after the new year, and a lot of great things happened on this campus athletically, not just involving football this fall.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, let me note relative Sam. I hope he makes an appearance before the end of the show. He may not be able to, and I want to thank him for doing a great job co-hosting this year and for bringing a musical element to our show that we had not had before. And as long as I'm the host, we'll never get from me.
Yeah.
But what his absence today shows is he's apparently more intimidated by Harry Heastan than he is by me.
I think most of us are.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, reflecting on the year, the first half of the year, this first semester, I can start with yesterday because as we tape this today, yesterday, that offensive line received the Joe Moore Award. Not only a phenomenal recognition for what I believe is unquestionably the best offensive line in the country this year, but I loved everything about it because the presenter was Aaron Taylor, and it sort of makes the point to everyone in the room. This is what you want to. This is the finished product. This is what you want to become, and to have Aaron do it, to have him reflect on Coach Moore, to have him talk about the experience of this place and how it shaped his life, and then have that mirrored when Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson reflected on winning the award and sort of said a lot of the same things about their love for this place, for Coach Heastan and the impact he's had on their lives. It was one of those Notre Dame moments, right, where there wasn't a lot of attention on, boy, we're a great offensive line. There was a lot of attention on what the experience of being here has for the impact it has on young men.
And you talk so much in every coach that you hire, be he or her a head coach or an assistant, about being great teachers. Look what Harry Heastan is doing here. I mean, he's sending guys to the NFL every year. Zach Martin just got his 4th straight Pro Bowl. And every year, even when guys graduate, other guys are stepping up. The level of play on this offensive line, and last year maybe a little dip, but overall has been exceptionally high.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. He's one of the great teachers. You know, he's intense, he's demanding, but everybody who plays for him understands he has their best interest at heart, that he cares about them and their development on and off the field. I already told him I'm decorating the offensive lineman room next year. I want a mural that currently exists. I want to change it so it's got 2 current NFL tackles, Ronnie Stanley and Mike McGlinchey, 2 current guards, Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson, and a center, Nick Martin. We'll have a great starting 5 in the NFL.
I know you were also very happy to see the women's volleyball program get back to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that was one of those watersheds that you're looking for. Coach McLaughlin has done a great job of building the program the right way. As we've talked about on this show, the lead time for recruiting in volleyball is so darn long. You know, freshmen are making their commitments, that you've got to start by developing the talent you have, and he has done that and really positioned us well for the future. So I think that program's in great shape. Obviously, our 2 basketball programs, it's early in the year for them. They're just entering conference play, but what they built in terms of consistent programs who can compete with the best programs in the country has been demonstrated early in this year. 2 great tournament wins by both teams. Muffet beating number 2 South Carolina, and Mike getting the Maui Classic. So great success there. Both soccer programs got in the tournament. Would have liked to have gotten further in it, but that happens sometimes. Soccer is an unforgiving sport in that regard. But the soccer news this year, of course, is Bobby Clark's decision to retire. If there's ever been an irreplaceable coach, it may be Coach Clark. And I know when I was under the weather and couldn't make it last week, he entertained our listeners.
Well, I should pay to get to talk to him because I mentioned on the show, I see him in the parking lot a lot because we park close to each other, and just him saying, "Hey, Jack, how you doing? Great day, isn't it?" And it's just something. This energy gets infused into your body. He's going to be missed just being on campus, even if you don't play soccer.
Well, that's right, and he has been, during my time here, the coach other coaches go to, and that's going to be a loss for us. And we have to be a little intentional about thinking, who helps fill that void.
He respectfully, as only Bobby Clark could do, made it clear that he is going to make suggestions. He would not presume to direct, but how involved will he be in this process?
I'm certainly consulting with him. He doesn't want to own the decision, and I won't let him. It's not what we should do. But I started by talking to him about what he thought I should be focused on, and as we've at this point we're doing this show, have completed the candidate interviews, at least the first round. I've shared with him impressions and sought his input. The role he's going to play for us in the next 6 months before his contract expires is to play that role of a resource to the coaches generally, in addition to helping the transition in the program.
This show, of course, is about football signing, the first early signing day. So tell me your thoughts. Obviously, Notre Dame embraced it and did very, very well. But the bigger picture about moving it up and your thoughts on whether this should continue.
I'm a big fan. I may be as bullish on this, and not because of today's results. I was this way in the legislative process when we discussed it. We've seen it play out in basketball, for example, and we've seen the positives there. I think you have to approach these things by saying, does it benefit the student athlete? In this case, the prospective student athlete. And I was always convinced it would. I was convinced it would because the schools have everything they need from an evaluation process for the most part. You've got end of semester grades in high school or close to it. You've seen their full body of work as high school football players. So the school can make a decision. And the student athletes should be able to make a decision, especially going forward as we move the official visit timeline up a little earlier. It was condensed this year. So when you've got those two things, let's create a system where they can commit, where they can enjoy their holidays, where they can have a second semester senior year as seniors, and just allow that to happen. They don't have to do it, but I can't see a positive negative in giving them the option to do it. And that's been my experience.
I'm not sure there's another school in the country that signed every committed athlete like Notre Dame did. I do know in basketball that the November signing period has now become the day. The April signing period has really become an afterthought. Is that what you'd like to see happen here?
I would. I'm not sure it'll happen. I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is the dynamic of the time of year when coaching changes occur. And, of course, that happens right at the end of the football season. And so I think that dynamic, paired with the challenges of doing this and preparing for a bowl, are two factors that I think will always keep the second period alive. But my hope is that this early period, for stable programs, for young men who have made decisions, can continue to grow and thrive.
As we were chatting, both Coach Elston and Coach Polian have entered the locker room, so I guess we'll let them arm wrestle or something and decide who is going to be up next.
I think we know who'd win that arm wrestling contest. No offense to Coach Polian, but I think that would be. We're fascinated to talk to them. Both have done a really remarkable job. Today's success is a byproduct of a great process, and that process was led by these two gentlemen, a great staff supporting it, but especially for us, having to cover the country, having that be central to who we are and what our identity is, it puts a premium on what the plan is, what the process is, how you implement it, and we've been so well served by these two guys. I'm excited to talk to them.
Well, we will be back to really dive deep into the weeds about recruiting. I'm guessing it might be Polian because there's a special teams meeting coming up at 1:30, and it's now 1 o'clock. So
all right.
I'm assuming that will be it. We'll find out right after this.
Billy is sold out tonight.
The anticipation is building.
We're set for the opening tip, and we are underway here at Notre Dame.
Tip, it goes to Young. Her jumper goes.
Jackie Young is going to be a star.
One word that sums up this Notre Dame team pretty well, and that is dominant.
Marina Mabry fires a three. Catherine Westfeld up over the rim and in.
That's Catherine Westfeld.
Enrique fires up the three. Got it. Outstanding.
If you're not here, you're missing it.
Our first guest on this special edition of the Jack Swarbrick Show, Coach Brian Polian, is wrapping up the first year of his second stint on the Notre Dame football coaching staff. Brian spent the previous 4 seasons as the head football coach at Nevada, where he guided the Wolfpack to 2 bowl bids and just the 5th bowl win in school history. During his previous 5-year stint at Notre Dame, Polian worked with special teams, linebackers, and defensive backs. This season, Brian served as both special teams coordinator and recruiting coordinator, playing a huge role in the outstanding class the Irish signed on this signing day. We are pleased to welcome Coach Polian to this week's early signing day edition of the Jack Swarbrick Show.
Coach, welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Happy to be here.
Squeezing it in between a very busy morning and an afternoon of practice. I'll start with the same question I did with Coach Kelly. Reflections on the dynamic of the early signing period.
Forced to make quicker decisions, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Had to make some value judgments on guys that you might, you might say, okay, I'm going to wait until he plays his whole senior year to figure out whether or not he's for us. I think our staff did an excellent job of evaluating some guys off of senior tape in, early September, October. And then, the urgency with which the last 3 weeks has happened. There was a thought that this early signing date would kind of take the craziness out of recruiting. It has taken some of the craziness, but, you only had to look at social media here over the last 4 or 5 days to see, I've decided to decommit. I'm, opening up my options. A lot of the same issues, just a little bit quicker. Our place in particular, we don't suffer those travails the way other schools do. Not a lot of surprises for us personally, which is a good thing. And, so ultimately I think it was good for us.
The past 3 weeks, from my somewhat distant vantage point, it felt a little bit like the Normandy invasion with everybody going everywhere. How do you assign the priorities? How do you make those puzzle pieces fit together so it's an efficient 3 weeks?
It starts with Coach Kelly and deciding where he needs to be and what makes the most sense. And as is often the case when contact starts, and we always finish the year on the West Coast, it made the most sense for him to just stay there. So Coach and I were together all up and down the West Coast for about 3.5 days. And then it was trying very hard to make sure that every guy we were going to sign had somebody in front of them quickly, whether it be Coach Kelly or another member of the staff. It was very important that everybody understood we were not taking anyone for granted, and that it was important that we get into their homes. And then those battles that were fighting, and in some cases are still fighting, getting in front of those families as quickly as we could. Dave Polian does a great job helping manage that from home base here while I'm out on the road. Lean on Coach Elston and his experience. Ask his advice, and there are a lot of unknown heroes, and the folks at Anthony Travel with what they deal with in terms of us calling, and I know I work with Mary Kowalski. I email her at 11 o'clock Pacific time, and I'm making changes for the next day that she's going to wake up to the next morning and have to get that stuff done. There are a lot of people behind the scenes that do an incredible job with helping us manage that 3 weeks of contact.
You mentioned that the work is not done. What is it going to be like between now and the February signing?
It's going to be uncharted territory. It's going to be, how do you actively recruit a class of 18 student athlete and still in the 3 weeks of contact that come in January, early February, we expect to get a big jump on our 19 class. So prioritizing, making sure that we're still in the homes fighting those battles, but at the same time, you could be doing a home visit with an 18, and in that day have stopped in at 6 schools where there are 19 prospects to pick up transcripts and talk to coaches, and it's going to be unique that way. This will literally be the first time that you've got your fingers in both classes at one time, and so that's going to be a little bit of a challenge.
With regard to the 18 class, what are our priorities in this period of time?
There's no doubt in my mind that we need to add another wide receiver, possibly 2 for the right guy. There are some players that we believe are transformational that are still out there that you would say, well, we only were going to take X amount at this position. Yeah, but if this guy says yes, we're going to find space for him. I think we certainly need to be open to an offensive lineman or 2, and we are actively continuing there. And look, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that we have players on our team now that have yet to make decisions about their future. If Josh Adams decides he's coming back, which we all hope he does, then we're good. If Josh decides he needs that he's going to pursue that dream now, then we might need to look at another tailback. And we've got a list going, and we're talking to people, but that's that's another thing that people haven't talked about. If you're a high-level Power 5 program where you do have players that are contemplating leaving early, how much of the recruiting pool is left out there anymore? Unless we were literally trying to encourage these conversations earlier than they did in the past, because we felt like if we need to address these spots in recruiting, we need to know that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's a premium on getting that read, and of course, those young men have to make those decisions on their own timetable, guided by the NFL rules. But that's an interesting dynamic. There's another segment of this that rarely gets talked about, but if my co-host, the chair of the Wapu Nation, were here, I know he'd bring it up, and that is, as you're building a roster, as you're looking forward to having the depth you need in the program, how does the walk-on analysis fit into all of this that's going on right now?
I think it's very important, specifically this year. I think there are a couple of spots where we need to actively seek. I mean, there are always walk-on players that are seeking us out. That just the aura of the school, what it means, the academics. There are always people that are seeking us out. But frankly, high-quality walk-ons on the line of scrimmage, defensive line and offensive line, are very difficult to find. And I think you need to actively go out and find guys that might fit that profile. And I think that's something that here over the next couple of weeks we need to get active in that market. For me specifically, the offensive line. We need to go look at non-scholarship leagues like the Ivy League, for instance, where you might be able to find a young man who academically fits our profile. He's not turning down a full scholarship in these leagues that provide need-based aid. And you look, and be able to say to a young man, hey, listen, we might be able to provide you with the opportunity to compete in front of 82,000 every weekend and play at the highest level possible. It might take a year or 2 or 3 in order for you to get into the mix, but there are guys out there. We know they exist. History has taught us that the Austin Websters of the world, the Mike Anellos of the world, they're out there. We just need to go actively searching for them.
Yeah, my former co-host Joe Schmidt would want me to say the Joe Schmidts of the world.
You know what? Joe Schmidt, he acts like he's Rudy. I was recruiting him at Stanford. It's not like nobody knew Joe was a good player. If Joe Schmidt was 2 inches taller, he would have had 40 scholarship offers.
Well, the good news is Joe thinks he's 2 inches taller.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
That is all it takes. One final question for you. You mentioned at the press conference this morning when you were asked sort of what you're most proud of with this group, the first thing you said was the fit.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that dynamic.
I think on a personal level, being at a bunch of different places and then coming back here, I have a greater appreciation for the when I came here the first time, I was 29. It was my first major job. I'd come from the MAC. So there was it was not an apples to apples comparison. And then you go out to different places and you interact with different groups, and you come to realize how special the university is. And you also come to realize, and history has taught us, that the young men that embrace who we are and what makes us different often have the most success. The Harrison Smiths of the world, the David Brutons of the world, these are just guys that I interacted with, but Will Fuller, people like that. And you also learn that when they don't fit, it's not good for anybody. It's an expensive energy for the position coach, for the head coach, for the young man, for the family, everybody around. So, there were some conscious decisions made by the staff and by Coach Kelly specifically where we might have walked away from a guy that was good enough, but we knew that it would have been a difficult road. It didn't align well. And when you look at this class, and that's not a judgment statement. I mean,
no,
it's not for everybody, and a lot of these young men will go be successful at other places, but we didn't waste our time on a guy that said, I want to be at a 55,000 student school by the beach. There comes a point where you just have to invest your time wisely. We know who we are. We think we engaged with guys that embrace who we are, and I think it makes the vibe around the program better, and it just gives these guys a chance for more success.
Yeah, I think you spoke to it. I mean, the first reason it's important is because of the experience of the young person, right? We have an obligation to them. We want them to succeed here, and when we get somebody whose chances of succeeding aren't what they should be, shame on us. But the other is, I think it's in some ways more expensive for us to miss than almost any place else in the country, because there are a few schools, I guess, but we're not bringing in a junior college transfer. We're limited to how we're building the roster behind it. So misses we live with misses for a while.
Yeah, and the thing is around here too is if a guy gets himself in academic trouble, I've been in places where, hey, we'll put him in 3 online classes and we'll get him caught up and it's all good. That atmosphere doesn't exist here, and we're proud of that. But
right.
We got to be sure that they're wired the right way. And a lot of it has to do with work ethic and desire to be here. And I have found that if they are willing to do the work and embrace what the place is about, what it means for their life moving forward, ultimately they'll be successful. And those are the guys that we got to connect with.
Well, thanks for helping us find those guys and attract them on a very successful day. Coach, thanks for being with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll be back in a minute.
We expect a great one tonight.
This crowd is electrified.
Strong drive and one. He'll be at the line. Have not been able to stop the drive.
Farrell bounces it in the lane to Rex Luger. The two-handed jam.
Oh, Colson! Are you serious, Bouncy? Bouncy, are you serious? They love him at the Golden Dome.
Our next guest spent much of the month of December crisscrossing the country to visit the living rooms of many of the top high school football players in the land, a large group of whom signed with the Irish on this first early signing day. With preparations for Notre Dame's Citrus Bowl matchup with LSU in full swing, we are pleased Irish head coach Brian Kelly has been able to carve some time out of his schedule to visit with us today.
Coach, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Jack. That sounded a little bit like the intro to Santa Claus. It's crisscrossing the country in the living rooms of many homes, with this being the 20th. But, yeah, it was about signing day. That's for certain.
And the mail always gets to find you, just like it does Santa Claus, right? You can count on the letters getting there.
No question.
Yeah.
And, but a really exciting day for us.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. Let's start with the process itself. Our first time through with early signing.
Yeah.
And sort of the preliminary version of it, right? Because we didn't have the benefit of the early official visits. This was just a period, the first foray in, early signing. What are your impressions of it?
Well, quite frankly, I think it says a lot about our university. It brings the definition of commitment back into play. When you're committed, truly committed to somewhere, you're going to see that happen at universities that are more than just, hey, I really like your uniforms. I love the university, what it stands for, the academic mission, and what it can do for me for the next 40 years. And so when you say I'm committed, you're committing yourself to what that mission is at the university. And that's why, we had 20 young men commit to this university. Now, quite frankly, there's more to it. We have great coaches that built great relationships over 9 to 24 months, but the reality of it is they committed to this university.
Yeah, we're doing this show at 12:25 on signing day, so we don't have all the information. But I got to think signing 20, we're probably going to be at the top of the board just in terms of young men who are willing to commit at this period of time.
Well, again, I don't know that there's anybody that's going to sign 20, so that would by default put us as the number one signed class in the country. And again, it's twofold, right? It's the work that we did leading up to this, because there was no ability to bring these kids in earlier. So it was the work that we did over this period of time. And as I mentioned to you earlier, it's between 9 months on the early end and 24 months on the long end of building relationships with these kids and getting them on campus and seeing Notre Dame. And so we didn't have the advantages of early signing. To have 20 on this day, other schools had that opportunity. We did a really good job. Our staff did a really good job. All of our support staff, yourself, you were intimately involved in seeing all these kids, meeting with them. Bob Monday, Don Bishop, admissions. I could go on, but everybody played a role in this.
What was your communication with the PSAs during the period about our expectations for early commitments?
Well, it hit them, like us in terms of, okay, who's going to sign early and who's not. So we had a couple of things going on here. First of all, do you sign not knowing whether you're going to get into a particular school? I mean, because once you commit to that school and sign the national letter of intent, it means you're going to go play at this school or forfeit up to 2 seasons of competition. Well, what happens if they don't get into Notre Dame?
Yeah.
That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think you and I both know that we would probably release them from that national letter of intent, but they don't know. They don't know all those things leading up to it. So we really had to dig in deep with the student athletes and their families and do a lot of that academic work up front and making sure that they felt comfortable that they were, in fact, either admitted to the university or that they were undoubtedly going to be admitted to the university. That was the first thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, if you're sure that this is the university that you want to be, how about not getting people visiting you for another 6 weeks and pulling you out of class? How's that sound? And mom and dad not getting that phone call that you don't want to answer. And there seems to be a lot of traction with them not wanting to get that phone call.
Yeah, well, that certainly makes sense. Not only, of course, a large number of early signees, but an unusually large number of mid-year enrollees, too. What goes into that process?
Well, I was asked that question, and it's not necessarily that we're out soliciting that. Now, it does help us because, as you know, we generally play the guys as their freshman year because very rarely do we have guys stick around for a fifth year at Notre Dame. They're going to go and start their careers instead of opting for a fifth year here, which makes total sense. But it just seemed to track the right way where we had a number of young men that were considering graduating early that we happened to be recruiting. And so the numbers grew this year to the largest amount of players that we've had at mid-year. And we've had some really good success with it where they can come here, really focus on their academics and kind of get ahead of the game a little bit with this, winter semester under their belt leading into the fall.
Yeah, the one thing I'd noticed, we've gotten much better at it in a sense. We've figured out a more fruitful orientation for them.
Yep.
We've figured out how to integrate them into the classes and dorms better. So I think it's working really well.
I think so, too. I think if you look at the young men that do graduate from high school, and look, the high schools that we're bringing to our campus, the kids that are graduating from those high schools, are really good high schools. So to graduate early, you have to be doing something right there anyway. So the preparation is generally really good for these kids to come in and be able to handle the rigors of starting early. And I think Ron Paulus has done a great job with our bridge program and getting our kids into Moreau classes where they can get a sense and feel for what it's like to be at Notre Dame in that first semester, which really is a nice entry into college life.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody on the staff probably has a view about how to build a roster. Coach Elko would probably like all 20 to be defensive guys, and Chip would probably like all 20 to be offensive guys. You're the only one who is at the top of that and can look over the whole thing. How are you trying to build a class? What goes into that?
Well, the first thing is you're looking at the availability of scholarships, because you have to know what your numbers are, and then where is the natural attrition outside the graduating numbers. So, for example, if you have 15 seniors, naturally, well, you have 15 open. But there's also that natural attrition within the ranks. Somebody decides not to play, he's going to leave early, maybe transfer. So there's another percent or two there. So maybe you're talking about 18 to 20 scholarships. So once you set your numbers, you then want to look at each position group, and we're generally looking at 2 deep in a swing player at each position group, and want to make sure that we keep to those numbers across the board. So each year has a different emphasis based upon who's graduating within those ranks, and then you go to replenish those ranks. After you feel comfortable within that area, we try to look, and I've always tried to do this, is best player available. Who's the best player out there that can impact? And we're not that far from any other sport, is that impact players generally the guys that can rush the quarterback or can cover guys on the outside. But everybody else knows that too. So, trying to find those guys is probably, and I think I had 2 questions that were about position specific today at my press conference, and they were asking, why didn't you get more defensive ends, and are you going to get any more corners? And so that always seems to be the 2 positions that you're looking to add if you filled in those numbers that you have within your 85.
It's early signing period. We had a great day, but we're not done. How do you approach the next recruiting window here?
So this will go for 48 hours, and, we feel like there may be another, couple of opportunities for us to sign prior to Friday. We'll see how that plays out. And then certainly the February signing date is still available to us. And so what we'll then look at is a couple of priority targets that we still have within our needs. As I mentioned today at my press conference, offensive line is still a need for us, so we'll focus on a few guys that did not sign in the early signing date and put all of our emphasis on that. And we still have a need at the wide receiver position. So the focus in those 2 areas. And then get ahead of the game a little bit. Recruiting is always, you always feel like you're trying to catch up. With the addition of Bill Reese, who's allowed us now the evaluation of 19s, 20s, and 21s, we can start to now stretch out our recruiting in January to evaluation of sophomores and now really be ahead of the game as we go back out on the road in January.
You don't get the benefit of the frequent flyer miles, but I can't imagine anyone in the country covered more miles than you did since we walked off the field at Stanford. What's that been like for you?
Well, I mean, first of all, the university supports me very well, and the fact that they get me to point A to B, and that's probably the one thing that we're blessed here with, the ability and the support that you give me to get me around to all of those locations, because we have 12 states out of the 20 that we have committed and signed today. I got to get to all those places, because the December 20th meant more about not only a commitment, but the parents really needed to see me in their homes. Yeah. So this is the first time that I actually did a home visit in every single one of those 20, and we did it in a very short period of time. So as much as it was about the travel, it was energizing, because you were going into their home and they were making a big leap of faith as well. So when you're getting that commitment back from them, that kind of gives you the energy to go in there and spend time with the families.
I'm not going to ask you what people do all day on a day like this to go through the individual players, but give me a sense of the class.
Yeah.
I mean, what does this class feel like to you?
Well, so there are a couple of areas that if you watched our football team play this year, you would say, okay, where do you need to continue to develop your football team? And I think, you would say certainly, the defensive backfield needs depth and competition within that. So this group that we signed today has competition that will make our team better in the defensive backfield. Now, everybody wants to know who's going to start there. Who could imagine who's going to start back there? Right. But I will tell you this, we've upped the competition level in the defensive backfield, both at corner and safety. So this class represents that. I think it also brings in some skilled players on offense that increases the competition level that will allow us now to really look at the skill position a little bit differently. It gives us some flexibility at wide receiver and tight end that, we were going to lose some guys to graduation. So I think both of those positions are augmented here. And then I think, when you look at it, it represents the holes of graduation have now been filled with this class. So three areas I think we've attacked pretty good within this class.
You mentioned it at the press conference, and Coach Polian reinforced it. But one of the things that really stands out for me, and as you say, I get to spend time with most of these young men. This class may be the best fit class that I've seen.
Well, and you and I talked about this. We've kind of reorganized our recruiting office, and Aaron Kearney's done an incredible job of leading that. But Dave Polian has kind of become our fit director in a sense that Bill Reese is kind of evaluating the players and what they can do on the field. And as that's vetted out and the board goes up there, Dave Polian has a board, and then he's making sure that they have a fit to Notre Dame. And this is the first class that has kind of been vetted that way, and I think it's gone very well from that perspective. To have 20 guys that have gotten in some fashion a thumbs up that, provided they don't get a bad sense of or a bad case of senioritis,
right,
they're all coming to Notre Dame, and I think that says volumes about this class in terms of their fit.
Yeah, great fit. The other thing that goes on during this 30-day window is upheaval in the coaching community. It happens every year.
Yep.
We had probably had more major jobs open this year. That has all kinds of ramifications. One of the things that I'm most excited about is the continuity we've been able to maintain in the coaching staff. You've done a great job of that.
Well, I think, first of all, last year we were the HR, of the year, in the sense that I think you and I and Chad Klunder, I think we had 22 new employees within that building. We don't want to go through that again, and we're not going through that again. But to have continuity within the staff going into year two, I think is huge. And so having everybody back allows us now to grow into that second year. And you hear this all the time. The biggest improvement, of a sports team is, and in particular football, is from week 1 to week 2. Well, that's the same thing in terms of year 1 to year 2. We're going to make great improvement in the weight room. We're going to make great improvement in terms of, our football team as they grow, and the development of our team, mentally, physically, all of the areas of our development are going to be seen in this second year. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it certainly is. Before I let you go and help the team get ready for LSU, I want to talk a little bit about our environment.
Yeah.
We're here in the renovated locker room, which had its first experience this year. What are your impressions of the stadium this year, including the locker room?
Well, I think, first of all, the locker room blends both the iconic tradition of Notre Dame. It doesn't look, Notre Dame is special because of who it is and its tradition, and you still feel that tradition in here, but the amenities make it feel so comfortable and 21st century. So to blend that in and to have an environment here where our kids feel so comfortable, you can see in the way they played. We had one point loss here at home in our initial year of being in this stadium, and then when they leave this stadium and they go out onto the field, the environment with our new Jumbotron and just the comfort level of the patrons that are in there now, it's just created a great environment for this football team.
Yeah, it has been, and the role you and others in the staff played in helping us get the right feel in here, I think it's worked out just great. Coach, thanks for being with us today. I know you get an awful lot going on, and
thanks,
we'll see you in Orlando.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show, Jack.
We'll be back in a minute.
Mike Elston is wrapping up his 19th year in collegiate coaching and his 8th at Notre Dame. This season, Elston was promoted to assistant head coach and returned to coaching the Irish defensive line after 2 seasons guiding the linebackers. The previous 2 seasons, he also served as Notre Dame's recruiting coordinator, duties he maintained until August of this year. Elston is also the longest tenured member of Coach Kelly's on-field coaching staff. Mike is here today to add his insight into the latest recruiting cycle and the first early signing day for college football.
Coach, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
You know, the most pressing question that crosses my mind as I'm sitting here with you on this day, knowing how crazy the past 3 weeks have been, what a success today has been, is, are the Elston girls covered for Christmas?
They definitely are.
All right.
You know what? This year, the early signing period forced me to do everything on Amazon.com. So I'm, and they wrap now, so I'm perfect. Everything got delivered to the house. It was already wrapped, and I'm all set.
You know, Kimberly gave me very few assignments because she knows how unreliable I am in that regard. One of them was a gift for one of our sons. I dutifully went online, bought it, all good. I got the email yesterday that the order's been canceled because they're out of stock.
Yeah.
The only thing I was asked to do.
Go figure.
I'm in huge trouble.
Yeah.
We've asked both Coach Kelly and Coach Polian, and I want to ask you impressions. You've been as close to recruiting as anybody at this place. Impressions on the early signing period.
You know, it's a lot of pressure early, but I believe that the benefits of the early signing period we're going to feel in January and February when we can turn our focus now sooner on to next year's class. We will only have a few scholarships available to fill the spots, and although it was a lot of pressure and putting together the class, and we traveled more this December, a week longer than normal, and spent time away from our current roster, our guys, for bowl prep. That was more challenging, but I think the rewards that we'll reap will be in January when I'm not doing that as much. I'll be able to, plant myself in Indiana and hit more schools and build relationships locally instead of flying to Houston and Atlanta and Dallas and all over the country chasing talent when I can just be, moving on to the next year's class.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you navigate the bowl prep? You mentioned that.
Yeah, it's Coach Kelly and the coordinators get together, and so there are lighter practices during the 3 weeks that we're out recruiting. So maybe a skeleton staff is in. We got a great support staff, so the graduate assistants might grab the defensive line, for example, if I'm on the road recruiting for the week. And if we have a Tuesday practice, then the defensive line assistant, Harlan Bauer, will grab the guys for the 15 minutes of individual meetings and practices that we'll have. So, we facilitate it with a skeleton crew, and it's just to keep guys fresh and into the flow of football instead of losing everything. But no game planning, no scheming is going on. It's just a matter of, staying sharp.
You've moved from having the recruiting coordinator responsibilities, and a lot of this class is built under, if not all of it, built under the time you were there, to now the associate head coach responsibilities. How do you look at roster management from both those perspectives?
Right. Well, I think the one thing that we've done a nice job in this class in looking at that roster is really trying to hang our hat on guys that are fits at Notre Dame. For the first 3 or 4 years we were here, we were chasing guys that weren't necessarily exactly what made it successful here at Notre Dame. And this class, I believe, when you look at the list of these guys, they're the epitome of what we we need to be signing here at Notre Dame. Whether they're high-level talent or in the mid-level talent, it's not a that's going to be seen in their future. You know,
Right.
it's a matter of whether they can come here and be successful academically and socially. And we believe that this group of guys is probably the closest we've had since we've been here. And big picture, looking at that now from the seat that I'm in, is we've got to continue to grow that and even improve that, and make it challenging for the guys that are true fits for us to say no to come to Notre Dame.
Does that build on itself? I mean, when you come for your official visit or an unofficial visit, and you're around the guys that are here. I mean, does that sort of help a prospective student athlete understand what the fit looks like?
It is, you know, especially when you bring them into this locker room after the game or after a practice in our practice locker room, and they see the behavior of the guys and the guys that they're going to be around on a daily basis, and they know they're all driven academically to get a degree, and they're all driven to be great on the football field. So, and they don't see that everywhere they go. You know, they see a lot of, you know, different types of guys, and our guys are unique and different, and it definitely grows on itself while it's here.
Let's speak for a moment to the young men who will be joining us, who you're going to be coaching on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
Give us a little sense of those guys.
Well, I'll start with Jamion Franklin. So I fell in love with Jamion the first time I met him. Very charismatic young man. You know, he's around my family, my daughters, and you know my daughters really well. And he just, you can tell he's just got a great heart, and he's very mature. And then when you flip on his football film, it's incredible the way he plays. He plays with great effort. And in this class, we needed to add guys to the defensive line that knew what toughness was, that knew what grit was, that knew what hard work was. And he in particular, and I'll get to the other guys also, but he knows what that is. He's had to work his whole life to get to where he's at. So I'm super excited to work with him and when he gets here in June. And then the twin brothers, Jason and Justin Adamiola, come from an incredible program, great coaching there with Coach Hansen and his staff. And so they've already got a leg up on a lot of guys in the country. Although maybe not the most talented defensive linemen, they are very, very talented, but they have a leg up on everybody because of their coaching and the technique that they're being taught at the defensive line. So, and again, you know, mature young guys that know what it means to work, that comes from an incredible program. So, and they're going to add a toughness and a grit that we need also.
What about the defense more broadly? Other guys we can look forward to joining that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think we've done an incredible job. Coach Elko and the rest of the guys in the back end have done a great job of adding some high-level skill with the safeties and the corners and speed and athleticism, guys that can cover and run and hit. You know, we've got guys that can run, we've got guys that can hit. We don't, you know, we got to add more guys that can do it all. You know, and I think that these guys in this class really answer that and add a lot of skill to the back end of our defense. And obviously the linebacker position, you know, great leadership with Bo Bauer and Ovi and Shane Simon, who played in the state championship game in New Jersey. So, excuse me, and Bo won 2 straight state championships. So, you know, the linebacker position's adding great leaders and very solid football players that can immediately add to depth on our defense.
You know, the theme of today's show probably has been about fit. You raised it, and we talked about it with the other coaches as well. I mean, we can look at test scores, and we can look at how they performed in the classroom, and all that stuff's valuable. And we can talk to their coaches. But when you're visiting somebody, what are the things that give you some insight into fit?
Well, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is, can they make it to campus? You know, do they have the means? Do the parents have the means to fly them up? So, for example, I was talking to a 2019 kid today, and he says to me, Coach, when do you want me to come back again? I mean, he's asking me when he should come back, and he's got the funds to do it. And, I mean, forget about the fact that he's an incredible football player, got great grades. His family has the means to travel from the state that he's from to Indiana, which is not an easy place to get to.
Right.
You know, if you live in Atlanta, there's a direct shot. But if you live in Houston, Texas, there's not a direct shot to Indiana. So there's money that needs to be spent. And so immediately when you talk to a young man that has the funds to fly from California or Florida or Georgia or Texas to South Bend, Indiana, a couple times before we can even pay for them to do it, then you know that, you know, when he gets here, it's going to hit his brain. He's going to be a fit. And obviously you're looking at his athletic skill set and his academic skill set. But The first thing that that comes to my mind when you ask the question is, does he have the means? Does the family have the means to fund trips, to come watch him play games, to come visit this university? And that typically, when they come here, then they're very interested.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it that I might not have contemplated. What impact does it have on your evaluation of the input you get from the guys on our current team when they spend time with a prospective student athlete who's on campus?
Yeah, I think that we put a ton of stock into that. And rarely do we get a guy here on campus for an official visit that doesn't get along with the guys or doesn't fit in, and we get a bad report. But you definitely take into account when you hear something and they raise the question about him. And again, I can't think of a lot of times that's happened, but it has happened a few times in the time that I've been here. And we put them around good guys, so if they're telling us something, we better listen.
Well, Coach, of all the position groups on the team that I don't want mad at me for keeping their coach from missing practice, it's your group. So I'm going to let you go so you can get to practice and help us prepare for the bowl game. Thanks so much for being with us, and have a great holidays.
Thanks, Jack. Same to you guys.
We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back to the Jack Swarbrick Show, which we're taping right before Christmas, as will air many places right after the New Year. Basically, the year is winding down.
Yes, it is. And again, I said it at the outset of the show, I want to thank Sam Bush for doing such a great job representing the Wapoo Nation so effectively. I think there's greater concern about who replaces him in the Wapoo Nation leadership than in this chair, but we'll figure that out.
Well, they have to go through a musical audition.
Well, then it's going to be a narrow group, I'll tell you. Just thanks to everybody involved in Notre Dame athletics. As you look over the course of the calendar year, it's been another great year. But even as we talked about the first semester, you mentioned we omitted perhaps the most impactful story of the first semester, which is hockey's start in the Big Ten, which has been extraordinary. Historic, yeah. Lots of moments like that to come, and that's made possible by so many people in every walk of life who help make Notre Dame athletics work. So to all of them, and especially to our fans, some of you will hear this show after the New Year, some before perhaps, but whenever you hear it, please know we hope you have a great holiday season. And a healthy, happy, and blessed new year.
Jack, thank you very much. Same to you. It's a pleasure to work with you.
Well, thanks for being with us. Best to you and your family. Let's go beat LSU in a bowl game.
That is the goal, isn't it? Folks, thanks for listening. Go Irish.